Do you see the welcoming energy tonight? Of the three witnesses to John Seed's presence in the world, Lee Wilkerson has expressed her perceptions vividly in the latest Free Weekly. Anne Lassiter has also written about her encounter with John Seed in India, and I want to read a bit from her reflections. One of the highlights of this for me was a presentation by renowned global environmentalist John Seed. I was touched by the way his work blends the spiritual life with the activist. I was impressed with how his work has focused on positive activity. He has been successfully involved in many parts of the world with environmental protection, replanting of forests, and education of people towards a place within of finding reverence for all living things. And his work has a history. Here's some of it in quick summary. Since 1979, he has been involved in the direct actions which have resulted in the protection of the Australian rainforest. In 1984, he helped initiate the United States Rainforest Action Network, which grew out of the first of his many United States speaking tours. He has created numerous projects protecting rainforests in South America, Asia, and the Pacific through providing benign and sustainable development projects for their indigenous inhabitants tied to the protection of their forests. He has written and lectured extensively on deep ecology and has been conducting councils of all beings and other re-earthing workshops throughout the world. With Joanna Macy, Pat Fleming, and Professor Arnie Nice, he wrote Thinking Like a Mountain Towards a Council of All Beings, which has now been translated into 10 languages. He is an accomplished bard and songwriter, and since 1981 has produced 5 albums of environmental songs. In 1995, he was awarded the Order of Australia Medal by the Australian government for services to conservation and the environment. I read John's contributions to Thinking Like a Mountain and made notes to share with others. But here is the man himself to tell you about the future we yearn for in harmony with other humans, with the earth, and all species. John Seed.
Oh, well, thanks for that beautiful introduction, Dick, and thanks for everyone for putting this on. I'm not used to walking into somewhere and having everything ready. Usually I'm scurrying around fixing things up and there was nothing left to do at all. I became involved with the environmental movement and with rainforests kind of accidentally and mysteriously in 1979. I was living on a community in northern New South Wales in Australia. We'd been growing our own vegetables and building our own houses and delivering our own babies for about 6 years. And we'd built a meditation centre and organising meditation retreats, and I thought I was going to spend the rest of my life doing that, when somehow I found myself embroiled in what, in retrospect, turned out to be the first direct action in defence of rainforests anywhere in the world. And the reason I was there was that it was happening 4 miles down the road from where I was living, and some neighbours had appealed for help at the local Sunday market, and I wasn't interested in rainforests, but I was interested in the neighbourhood and in community, and so I just kind of went along to see what was going on. And something happened to me there which I never really understood what it was, except that I still haven't recovered from it. That I felt the trees called me, and it was bewildering and a bit terrifying, but it was strong and irresistible. So here I am. In later years, I discovered that these rainforests are the very womb of life. They're home to more than half of the species of plants and animals in the world. But at that time I knew nothing about this. I just felt this incredible feeling of connection, and it was too good to ignore. I also learned later that these forests were disappearing at a horrendous rate, that less than a single human lifetime remained at current rates of destruction, as revealed by the satellite photographs, and yet in the late 70s and early 80s there wasn't a single environment group in the world that had this on their agenda. And so we ended up forming the Rainforest Information Centre as a group of volunteers to sound the alarm and to see what we could do about protecting the rainforests. But back in 1979 it was strange, because no one knew what they were doing. No one had ever done anything like this before from our group, and yet it was tremendously successful anyway, because I guess the society hadn't developed any antibodies yet to the kinds of theatrical things that people would do, like climbing up trees and chaining themselves to machinery and so on, so that it was always the first item on the news, and it was in the newspapers all the time. And in our local town, people were talking in hushed whispers and saying, "Have you heard? The hippies have gone nuts." Anyway, after 2 years, in 1981, and a couple of hundred arrests, an opinion poll found that 70% of the people of our state of New South Wales wanted an end to rainforest logging, and the government legislated accordingly, with a great string of rainforest national parks stretching from the Queensland border in the north down to the Victorian border in the south, including the little 400-acre patch that we had so strenuously been struggling to defend. So it was a very empowering start to a career as an activist, and we went on from there to similar actions. Our rainforests in New South Wales are subtropical rainforests, and a couple of years later we went down to Tasmania to protect the temperate rainforests of that state, and then in the mid-80s up to far north Queensland to protect the tropical rainforests. And in each case our efforts were crowned with success, and national parks and eventually World Heritage listing followed. And in those same years, the forest protection movement was growing in this country. In '84, the Rainforest Action Network started in Europe and elsewhere. But we couldn't help but notice that for every forest that was being protected in those years, 100 forests or 1,000 forests were being lost. And that it was clear that there was no way that we could save the planet one forest at a time, that these are one of the vital organs of the living earth, these forests, and that it wasn't going to be possible to keep the whole thing going by protecting a little piece here and a little piece there, any more than you could keep a tree alive by protecting a few bits of bark around the tree. Trees aren't like that, and the earth isn't like that either, that we need large areas of wild nature to maintain the life support systems, the atmosphere, the climate, the rainfall, the soil, all of those things. And that's when I began to wonder about the psychological dimension to this. How was it that a supposedly intelligent species like ours could do something so foolish as to destroy its own life support systems? Paul Ehrlich said, "We're sawing off the branch that we're sitting on," seeming to indicate some kind of a psychological problem. I'm sure you'll agree. And I wondered whether there was any way to understand that psychological or, dare I say, spiritual dimension to this, because if there was, then maybe I wouldn't have to spend the rest of my life, running from one forest to the next, shouting, "Stop, stop," and could, get back to meditating or something. But so it was in the mid-80s that I first came upon the philosophy of deep ecology, and that gave me the feeling for the first time that I was beginning to get a handle on why it was that humans behave in this way, modern humans at least. And to deep ecology, the fundamental problem is the illusion of separation between human beings and nature that modern humans suffer from. And this illusion of separation itself stems, according to deep ecology, from anthropocentrism, or human-centeredness, this idea that human beings are the crown of creation, are the measure of all being, that only humans were created in God's image, only humans have a soul, that the world consists of humans and resources. You know, the only thing that has any value is humans, and anything else only has value, instrumental value. Like if it's valuable as a resource for human beings, it has value, but it has no intrinsic value. Life has no intrinsic value. The earth has no intrinsic value. And this kind of arrogance is, so old, and it permeates every aspect of every institution of society and the very language that we speak. So that it's interesting that there's a little town called Earth in, I think it's Texas, someone correct me if I'm wrong, and because it's a town that was created by people, it deserves an uppercase E. But there's a little planet called Earth in the solar system, and because it wasn't created by humans, it only gets a lowercase e. You know? So it's the only things that deserve an uppercase, the only things that deserve respect are the things that humans create, and that this is, according to deep ecology, the root of the problem. Deep ecology was formulated by Professor Arne Næss, from the Emeritus Professor of Philosophy from Oslo University, and he said that because of the thousands of years of conditioning in this way of thinking and in this way of being, we're not going to be able to think our way out of this, that it goes much deeper than that. He said that ecological ideas are not enough. We need an ecological identity, an ecological self. And I'd like to go on and explore what he meant by that. In talking about these things, I found that poetry and song is perhaps the most powerful way to communicate, and so I'd like to share with you a song about deep ecology and about the historical roots of the environmental crisis. The song was written by Darrell Cherney from California, who was one of the main energies in protecting the redwoods in Northern California. Now the Lord made the world in just 6 days. They wondered to behold when it was done. Deep oceans and blue sky, forest green and mountain high, with animals that crawl and fly and run. But one of God's creatures wasn't pleased. Guess who? It wanted to create with its own hands. So it clear-cut all the trees, carved the mountains, spoiled the seas, proclaiming it the way that God had planned. But you can't clear-cut your way to heaven, and strip mines don't make it with the Lord. Bulldozing the creation won't win God's admiration, and the pearly gates may close forevermore. Now my mama, she used to read the family Bible, where it said thou shalt not covet, steal or kill. Still I coveted the forests and the mountains, and I stole my mother nature's gems at will. And I killed off many critters to extinction. But I'm sure God must have made them by mistake, 'cause I had to keep my job where I plunder, rape and rob. And I swear to you, it's for my children's sake. But you can't clear-cut your way to heaven No, you can't, brothers and sisters. Strip minds don't make it with the Lord. Bulldozing the creation won't win God's admiration, and the pearly gates may close forevermore. Well, today I heard they mined the Rock of Ages, 'cause they thought it had a lump of gold inside. And they're dumping PCBs into the Sea of Galilee, and they milled the cross on which our Savior died. And they leveled old Jerusalem for condos, done built a shopping mall where Jesus did his thing. And as I looked on our success at creating such a mess, well, I swear I heard a band of angels sing. No, you can't clear-cut your way to heaven, and strip minds don't make it with the Lord. Bulldozing the creation won't win God's admiration, and the pearly gates may close forevermore. Earth first. So Arnie Neff said that ecological ideas are not enough. We need an ecological identity, an ecological self. And he suggested that the way that we can find this ecological identity, or rather the way that we can uncover it and nourish it, is through community therapies that heal our relations with the widest possible community, that of all living beings. And he wrote this in an essay which was included in the book that he wrote with Joanna Macy and Pat Fleming and myself. And when I first read this essay, I'd already been working with Joanna Macy for a couple of years doing these workshops called the Council of All Beings, which were a synthesis of her work in the psychology of disempowerment. Like what she'd been doing for many years is workshops with people, especially activists, to turn the feelings of despair and grief and paralysis and burnout that many activists are afflicted with, to show how these could be turned into empowerment and a joyful way of approaching things. That what Joanna found was that it was the suppression and the denial of the deepest feelings that all of us, I think, must have deep down, of despair and rage and grief about what's happening to our world, and that we live in a culture in which there's no opportunity to express those things, there's no invitation to share those things with each other. So in her workshops she creates a safe container for those feelings, and discovers that a tremendous amount of energy is released through doing this, and that this energy expresses itself as empowerment and optimism. So by bringing this together with the ideas of deep ecology, with the philosophy of deep ecology, we made the Council of All Beings, and we're working in Australia and the United States and in Europe. So when I heard about Arnie Neff saying that we needed community therapies, I thought, perhaps we've chanced upon one of these community therapies, that after the Council of All Beings workshop, people commonly report a feeling of being healed from that sense of separation from nature, and this is a work that's done in community circles, groups of people. But the following year, I had the good fortune to witness a beautiful ceremony on a mesa in the southwest of this country, where some Hopi people were doing the ceremony that they do at the same time every year, and according to them have been doing for 10,000 years. They say that they've lived in the same place for longer than anyone else in this hemisphere. And it looked just like the Council of All Beings. People were wearing masks to represent the different animals and plants that were in their lives, and people were drumming and dancing, and I suddenly realised with a shock that therapies aren't supposed to last for that long, that therapies are supposed to have a beginning and an end, and like if there's something wrong with me, I go and see a therapist, and if the therapy works, then I can stop seeing a therapist because I'm healed. But why was it that people continued to do these ceremonies year after year and generation after generation? And as I studied it further, I discovered that I couldn't find a single example anywhere in the world of an Indigenous community that didn't have such ceremonies that acknowledge the interrelationship between human beings and the rest of the Earth community, and that show respect, visibly, community-wide respect for all our relations, teach their children these things. Children grow up witnessing the adults in their community showing this respect. And then it occurred to me that we're probably the first culture in the history of humankind that hasn't had these ceremonies and these rituals, which indicates that perhaps this tendency to separate out from the rest of nature is not just a modern problem the way that I had previously thought, but that it must be something that goes very deep in humanity, because bears don't need ceremonies in order to remember who they are, but in order to remember, that we're part of this, that we're inextricably embedded in nature, that the nature out there and the nature in here are continuous. Of course, there are a lot of people who don't necessarily believe this, and to them I just say, well, just hold your breath for 5 minutes and think about the atmosphere, The atmosphere, doesn't sound like part of me, it sounds like it's way over there somewhere. That's the environment if I ever heard it. But if we hold our breath while we think about it, then we realise that it's impossible. There's no such thing as over there. It's all cycling through us all the time. And the fact that we don't recognise that, the fact that we don't identify with it, that's where the problem lies, and that's why we make foolish decisions that could result in our undoing. So in the Council of All Beings and the other re-earthing workshops, we extend our identity both into the non-human world by learning how to allow other than human voices to speak through us, but also we extend our identity through time, where we begin to remember that we've been here all along, that we didn't come here from somewhere else, that every cell in my body is descended in an unbroken chain from the first cell that emerged on Earth 4.5 billion years ago, and that all the great adventures that are told in the epic version of our evolutionary story, that's actually my story, that's my creation myth. And so I'd like to offer a tiny 5-minute experiential piece if you'll join me for it. And for this, I'd like you to take the hand of somebody who's sitting next to you or in the row behind you, and close your eyes. And you can take 2 hands if if there's an odd person out, then it's okay to hold 2 people's hands. And close your eyes and just begin to explore this hand. As if you've never felt anything like this before. So see how much you can explore this hand as if you didn't know what it was and you were trying to find out what it was. There are these long bits coming off it, how many of them, and feeling the skin and the knuckles and the sinews and the warmth or the coldness of the hand and the moisture or the dryness of the hand. And see what you can learn about this hand. Is this a hand that's calloused from doing physical work, or is it more a computer kind of a hand? And also, what can you learn about this hand from the way that it's exploring your hand? Is this a timid hand or a bold hand? In any case, it's a human hand from planet Earth. They don't make them like this anywhere else. And so we'll just pause for a moment and shake this hand, greet this hand, and through this hand greet humanity itself. And now let this hand slip you back into the ocean from which it came, and see if you can feel the fin of the fish. Before this was a hand, it belonged to millions and millions of generations of fish. And the salt in this hand can still be traced to the salt of the seas of 400 million years ago. Both the salt in the hand and the salt in the seas have evolved since that time. But if we trace them both back, we find the meeting point about 400 million years ago. And now, barely touching this hand, let it take you right back to the very beginning and see if you can feel the very dust of stars out of which this hand is woven. This hand is made out of tiny pieces of stardust that have been cycling through the Milky Way galaxy for aeons and aeons and have woven themselves into countless forms and now present themselves to you as this hand. And now say goodbye to this hand. And so that's a short example of the kind of experiential processes that help us to remember our ecological identity. And we'll be doing a weekend of these a couple of hours from here, this coming weekend near Jasper. I think anyone who's interested, come and see me afterwards and I'll give you directions. And I've also been invited to come back next year for Earth Day and do another weekend, maybe somewhere around here. So, one of the people who emphasises the importance of the universe story, this epic story of the formation of the universe and formation of life on Earth, is Thomas Berry, who some of you may know his work. He was a theologian, a Catholic theologian, who in the middle of his life discovered that actually he was a geologian, and his attention turned from the sky god to the earth god, and he's been translating the Christianity into a kind of a modern language, and seeing the 7 days of creation as being the 13.7 billion years of creation. And he called on artists and poets and musicians to come to this project because he said, we can't leave it to the scientists. It's too late for all of the different creation myths that, they're so beautiful and poetic, and there are tens of thousands of creation myths. Each different culture has its own story of how we come to be here, and so many of the antagonisms that exist on the earth is really just one creation myth battling against another creation myth. And he says now we need an earthling creation myth. We need a creation myth that will unite all of us, and it's not going to be Christianity, it's not going to be Islam, it's not going to be communism. That we need something that that basically anyone with a navel can relate to. So one of the poets who responded to his call was a young man who's now living in Oakland in California, and I'd like to share with you his poem, The Universe Jam. The flame has lit up the world from within. All things, individually and collectively, are interpenetrated and flooded by it. You who mould the manifold so as to breathe your life into it, I pray to you. The first verse of the universe pours forth like a sea of mystery. Out of the void, unmanifest silence. Space-time comes into existence, unseen, shaping, swirling, unfurling. Hydrogen, helium, divine is revealed within galactic whirlpools as energy flows in. A star collapses, supernova explosion, a cloud of cosmic debris, drawn together by gravity, by the mystery of attraction, primordial bonding, universe action, stardust swirling, swarming gases, organizing and forming mass. You see, the sun is the one that spun the 9 others, give but the Mother Earth and her sisters and brothers, Mercury, Venus, Mars and Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune and Pluto. Everyone is the sun. The sun is the one, everyone. Everybody better wake up. But the earth gave birth to continents and oceans, shaping and shaking in waves of emotion, crashes of lightning bombarding and striking, exposing the globe as it glows like a strobe, and setting the stage for the first cell of life. So simple, so basic, so primal that I place it at the top of the chain from which all life sprang. More forms adorn the earth as they bring diversity dispersing the song of creation. Ring in the dawn, sing along in celebration. I just want to celebrate life. I just want to celebrate Earth. I just want to celebrate the cosmos. I just want to celebrate The sea comes alive, starts to thrive with new life forms. Storms swept the planet, plants crept on granite enchanted. By the sun's solar power, the earth gave birth to green leaves and flowers. Lava flows, mountains rose. Tropical islands, forests and meadows, fed by the freshwater streams, the veins, heavenly rain strained back to the sea. The fish are set free as they swim onto sand. Fins turn to limbs and they limp onto land. Amphibians, reptiles, new stars of creatures, seeing through new being the range of her features. The earth, your mother, gave birth to eyesight, looking within as she spins in the sunlight. On to the dawn, to the day of the dinosaur. Pterodactyl soars, Tyrannosaurus rex. Towering, devouring, so who's up next? Mammals and primates, all life interrelated, divinely created. So don't you think it's time we celebrated? I just want to celebrate life. I just want to celebrate Earth. I just want to celebrate the cosmos. I just want to celebrate. Thank you. So I have the good fortune, the privilege, I suppose, to be able to share my life between, on the one hand, very practical projects for protecting this rainforest and that rainforest, and working on the psychological, spiritual, deep ecology level of things, because nothing's going to stay saved for very long without a fundamental change in consciousness. We might think that having a national park or a World Heritage Area has saved something, but I believe that all it's done is buy time for that change in consciousness, because without that, it's all going to... I mean, you can't save a little bit here and a little bit there. It's one green planet or a bowl of dust. And what you can do is, pray for the change in consciousness and hope that there's enough genetic material, if and when that change happens, for something good to continue, after us. So, among the projects that we at the Rainforest Information Centre, we're volunteers and we work in many different parts of the world. At the moment, working a lot in the headwaters of the Amazon, in Ecuador, in Peru and in Colombia, to try and stop the oil companies that are laying that part of the world to waste and polluting the streams and rivers that feed into the Amazon, the greatest river in the world, and working especially with indigenous nations such as the Warani and the Sarayaku, who are implacably opposed to the oil companies, but have very little in the way of resources to give substance to that opposition. So they need radios to communicate with each other, and we purchase those radios, and so on and so on. I'm working also in India and in other parts of Asia for the protection of forest and the replanting of forests. And I'd like to show a short, maybe 10-minute film that we made about one of those projects in a little while. But before I do so, I'd like to talk about one of the directions that our work is going, particularly, is to try and look for the overlap between the different spiritual traditions and ecological concern, ecological compassion, ecological awareness. So we started something called the Dharma Gaia Trust. In Tibetan Buddhism, the Buddha has several different bodies, and his earth body is called Dharma Kaya. And so Dharma Gaia is sort of bringing that to the Greek goddess of earth, Gaia. And what the Dharma Gaia Trust does is we raise money from wealthy Buddhist communities in this country and in Europe, and we distribute it to Buddhists in Asia, especially Buddhist clergy, who are working on ecological projects. So, for example, in Thailand, there are some forest monks who have been protecting old-growth forests by ordaining trees. They wrap a piece of orange cloth around the old-growth trees and do a ceremony that turns these trees into monks, and the woodcutters won't touch these trees, and they've saved like very significant areas of forest in this way, but they can never get enough orange cloth, which is where we come in. Likewise, we've worked with nuns in Ladakh who are replanting the forests there, and we've worked with the abbot of a monastery in Sri Lanka who's extending the sacred grove of his monastery, and in whatever ways we can, trying to nourish the growing shoots of ecological sensibility in that tradition. working with Thomas Berry and Sister Miriam Therese McGillis and Matthew Fox, trying to really encourage ecological Christianity. Last weekend, for the first time, I worked with a Jewish community, and I facilitated a workshop called Judaism and Deep Ecology at a Jewish retreat centre in upstate New York, which I co-facilitated with Rabbi David Seidenberg, who's a great and new friend from Los Angeles that flew over to do this, and we're going to do it again next year. One of the things about deep ecology is that once we realise that, as Aldo Leopold said, we are a plain member of the biota, nothing special. That it's not that the world is a pyramid with human beings on the top and everything else just there as support for us, or it's not that the world is a stage and we're the stars of the show and everything else is just scenery. The world is more like a web, and we're one strand in that web, and as we destroy the other strands, we destroy ourselves. But what that means is that we're also not the villain of the piece. We're not a cancer that's destroying everything. That if we're being destructive of the Cenozoic era, as clearly we are, well, that's only natural too. The universe is a pretty violent place. It has that aspect about it. It all started with a huge explosion apparently, and it's been filled with enormous explosions ever since. And there's this great poem by Robinson Jeffers where he thinks that maybe the reason why we like to have all these bombs and wars is because it reminds us of where we've come from, And so I feel that one of the things that deep ecology offers is the possibility that we don't really have to feel guilty about what it is that human beings are doing. That 3 billion years ago, some of the bacteria of that time learned how to capture photons of light from the sun and split chemical bonds in order to feed themselves by inventing photosynthesis. And so they would split CO2 in order to grab the carbon. They would split H2O in order to get the hydrogen, and they'd get the carbohydrates they needed for their bodies. But in doing so, they inadvertently released molecules of oxygen, and oxygen's a toxic gas for anaerobic life, which was all that there was at that time. So I can well imagine all the anaerobic bacteria walking around with placards saying "down with oxygen" and pollution and all of these things. But history is written by the victors, and now the anaerobic bacteria just live in compost heaps and in the hind guts of termites, so we didn't come from somewhere else. We're sort of natural as well. And there's a beautiful poem by Robinson Jeffers, in my opinion, the greatest of the American poets, who is sadly neglected, I believe, who lived in Big Sur in California, wrote his best poetry as a young man in the 1920s, and prefigured a lot of the ideas of deep ecology. And I'd like to share with you my favourite, at the moment, my favourite of his poems, which I think you'll agree is incredibly prophetic, as well as not only of deep ecology, but much else besides. While this America settles in the mould of its vulgarity, heavily thickening to empire, and protest, just a bubble in the molten mass, pops and sighs out and the mass hardens, I, sadly smiling, remember that the flower fades to make fruit, fruit rots to make earth. Out of the mother, through the spring exultances, ripeness and decadence, and home to the mother. You, making haste on decay. Not blameworthy. Life is good, be it stubbornly long or suddenly a mortal splendour. Meteors are not needed less than mountains. Shine, perishing republic. But for my children, I would have them remember that corruption never has been compulsory. When the cities lie at the monster's feet, there are left the mountains. And boys, be in nothing so moderate as in love of man, a clever servant, insufferable master. There lies the trap that catches noblest spirits, that caught, they say, God when he walked on earth. That's Shine, Perishing Republic by Robinson Jeffers. You can Google him and get lots of poems just as good as that one. So I'd like to, complete my presentation with a song, and then like to, hear from all of you. I'm happy to answer questions, of course, but I'd be even more interested in arguments, disagreements, comments, rants of any sort. So this is a love song to the universe. Remember that you're standing on a planet that's evolving, revolving at 900 miles an hour. It's orbiting at 19 miles per second, so it's reckoned a sun that is the source of all our power. The sun and you and me and all the stars that you can see are moving at 1,000,000 miles a day in an outer spiral arm at 40,000 miles an hour in a galaxy they call the Milky Way. The Milky Way. Our galaxy contains 100 billion stars. It's 100,000 light years side to side. It bulges in the middle, 16,000 light years thick, but out by us is just 3,000 light years wide. We're 30,000 light years from galactic central point. We go round every 200 million years. And this galaxy is only one of millions and billions in this amazing and expanding universe. Expanding universe. The universe itself keeps on expanding and expanding in all of the directions it can whiz. As fast as it can go, at the speed of light, 12 million miles a minute, and that's the fastest speed there is. So remember when you're feeling very small and insecure, how amazingly unlikely is your birth. And sink your roots deep into the galaxy dance of life, planet Earth. And sink your roots deep into reality, dance your life for planet Earth. Who's first?
John, what's your next project and why is it important?
I don't really have projects of my own so much these days, that I've just found that in 30 years of this work I've come to know so many incredible activists who are doing incredible things. There's an expression in Australia about a car that doesn't need much fuel, that it runs on the smell of an oily rag. So I know all these activists who run on the smell of an oily rag, and I just find that by travelling around and raising funding for their projects, a lot more gets done than when I do projects myself. But, so that all the proceeds from tonight and the sale of any CDs and DVDs out in the lobby afterwards, as well as, lecture fees and workshop fees and so on, go to these projects. But having said that, the one that I'm the most interested in and the closest to being hands-on with at the moment is in India, and it's the rainforests of India are, as you can imagine, under incredible challenges. And the most important of the rainforests in peninsular India is in the western Ghats of Kerala, the state of Kerala. There's an area that's protected called the Periyar Tiger Reserve on the border of Kerala and Tamil Nadu. And one of the great ecologists of India, Dr. Satish Chandran Nair, and a friend of 20 years, is working to treble the size of that reserve. And so I'm working with him to develop a campaign, a grassroots campaign initially, and then one that the international community can kind of join in on perhaps later this year or early next year. And So I was able to raise funding for him from some non-government organisations in the Netherlands so that he can map. So we've bought him a GPS and a vehicle so that he can go around and map the new borders that we're proposing for this enlarged national park. So that's one that's particularly close to my heart. But if you go to the Rainforest Information Centre website, and if you Google John Seed and ignore the New Bedford baseball coach, then you'll find your way to the Rainforest Information Centre website. Then you'll see that there are scores of projects that we're supporting in many different parts of the world, and I just find at this point in my life, doing workshops and teaching in order to support these projects is kind of what I'm called to do, rather than having a project of my own, so to say. But thanks for the question.
Do you remember any of your own insights as a child that spiraled you onto your path?
I'm sorry?
Do you remember any of your own insights as a child that spiraled you onto your own path?
So do I remember any of the insights when I was a child that led me to my path? It's funny because I've tried to think about this, and I grew up in Sydney and really had no connection with nature at all. And then I remembered just going to the beach and surfing. And the thing about waves was that you either got them right or you got your face full of sand. You couldn't get a note from your mum, and you couldn't. It wasn't a social phenomenon. It sort of had. So there was something about just being in nature, in the water at Bondi Beach when I was growing up. That's the only thing that I can think of. Everything else about my life was entirely socially constructed. So perhaps that was helpful.
Have you done any work with tropical dry forests?
I haven't myself done any work with tropical dry forests, but I've read about really interesting work that's being done. And of course, every forest type is as important as every other forest type. We need, it's like we need the entire body in order for any part of it to survive. Is that something that you've worked with?
Oh, I've been interested in.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I thought Australia probably has a bunch. I'm familiar with one in Costa Rica.
Yeah.
I was a little confused when you spoke about kind of the inevitability of violence in their culture. And are you saying that are you saying that you accept that as an inevitable feature, and that perhaps it is? I'm not sure if I understood your point concerning that. Are you saying that we need to transform spiritually our relationship with nature and not so much focus on trying to stop the violent forces that...
No, did people hear that question? Yeah, okay. So I think the only point that I was trying to make was that guilt about how we've been up until now isn't helpful and really isn't warranted. That I think that, when you think of, one of these monkeys that developed the sensitivity and developed the imagination to be able to foresee its own death and to be able to foresee the sharpness of the claws and the depth of the hunger and so on, it's easy to understand the forces that led us to be the way that we are. And then the question is there a way in which we can change that will allow our survival and allow us to prosper and to allow the remnants of the Cenozoic era, to prosper alongside of us. So I'm for peace, and I'm for working to end, ameliorate the violence. But it's just that some people, I think, have a fantasy that we used to be peaceful and then we stopped or something like that. And I don't actually see any evidence for that, and that it may be, especially with the incredible pressure brought to bear by the chance of our own impending extinction. The fact that what we're doing now, there are several different ways in which it could completely undo us. that maybe they're the conditions that will allow for the emerging of something new that hasn't been before. But I just hear a lot of people being very hard on human beings, and I don't know that that's helpful.
Continue that theme that you pretty much said. There is only one moment in all of history when each of us could have been conceived. Our parents had to be those two people together at that moment. And to regret all of past history, if you were a person whose ancestors were slaves, if they had not been slaves, you as an individual would not have existed. So you have to accept that all of creation and all of the evolution has brought you to live at this moment. This is your only chance at that moment of conception. That's true of every seed in the forest. The ones that are in a certain place, in a certain moment, get the moisture and so forth, live. And to appreciate that opportunity and make the most of it is a great lesson that you're teaching us what you talk about.
Thank you. Yeah.
I heard you say that we need a global change in consciousness, and I'm wondering, do you believe that humans have the ability to naturally change their consciousness, or do you think that there needs to be some sort of global catastrophe of some sort that will reawaken?
The question is, do I think...
Repeat the question.
Yeah. Do I think that how might this change of consciousness take place, and does it need some kind of a global catastrophe in order to awaken people? I don't know the answer, but I feel that we're in the middle of a global catastrophe, and that it's easy to hide from that, especially in this country and especially in Australia. But it seems to me that evolution takes place from environmental pressure, that there are all kinds of species, some certain kinds of sharks, for instance, which haven't changed in hundreds of millions of years because there's been no pressure on them to change from their environment. And that it seems to me that if we open ourselves to as fully as we can to what's actually happening in the world at the moment, then the pressure of our own impending extinction as a possibility may be the environmental pressure that could pop something into being. But I don't think that it's going to be some future catastrophe, because I think that any catastrophe more severe than the one that's already taking place could well make it much too late for any change. I mean, what's happening to the climate at the moment, James Lovelock, who popularised the Gaia theory that says that the Earth itself is alive, has looked at the different climate regimes, the different equilibria that have existed, and in his most recent book he's very pessimistic, and he says actually it's too late, and he's looking forward to 100,000 years of bad weather with hot weather, with possibly a few breeding pairs of humans surviving in the Arctic Circle. So I don't subscribe to that point of view, but I just mean like the terrible has already happened. It's not something that if something terrible happened, maybe we'd maybe we'd wake up. I think that we need to allow ourselves to experience how terrible this already is, what's taken place, and perhaps that will create the motivation for some sort of a change, I hope.
Do you still find time to be part of your meditation?
No, I don't. I find that I find time for being in nature and being, planting trees and being in the garden and so on, and that seems to give me the nourishment that I need.
Obviously, you're very busy. What do you think the most important
Well, I sort of feel like the most important thing is to allow a desire to be involved in the great issues of the day to grow in us, and to ask that question. Arnie Neff, when he was asked for the definition of deep ecology, he replied, asking deeper questions. So he didn't want to answer the question so much as to applaud the question and say, take that question as deep as you can, you know. So I think the answer is that there are probably thousands of important things that need to be done, and that if we offer ourselves and say, thy will not mine, to whatever we believe in, Gaia, the earth, you know, the evolutionary spark that has been passed, you know, down, and that we're now responsible for, then an answer that suits you will emerge from that, you know, and that's going to be the correct answer, whereas any answer that another person can give you would just be like their opinion or something like that.
I guess I don't really have an answer to whether the work that you're doing in deep ecology, you feel is going to have an effect on our inevitable extinction. You made reference to your rainforest work. You worked one forest at a time, but then you began to feel that saving one forest at a time wasn't going to be enough. Maybe, I don't know, are the audiences that you're reaching maybe something like that, one rainforest at a time? Are we enough? Is the deep ecology working? Is it spreading fast enough? Or what do you feel?
Well, I don't have any opinion about that. You know, like I just feel that if I can do the best that I can do, then I'm satisfied. You know, like I feel so grateful to have a sense of what it is that I'm supposed to be doing and have the opportunity to do that, that beyond that, it's almost like none of my business, really. Certainly there's no technical problems. As far as I can see, we have all the technology and all the intelligence and everything we need to succeed beyond our wildest dreams and to look after all of us. There aren't too many people in the world. We can feed, we can look after everyone, you know, but that would have to be our project. And how that's to happen, you know, like basically the only change that needs to take place is in consciousness. It is goodwill, you know, is love. And so I pray for that, and I do whatever I can do, and that gives me, I feel very satisfied with my life. I don't feel like I'm an unhappy person just because I have no guarantee that it's going to succeed. And I guess we never do have a guarantee that our work is going to succeed anyway. We might think we do, but we're probably mistaken. So I'd like to just end up with one final poem from Drew Dellinger again, and this is called Word to the Mother. Word to the Mother. I once was blind, but now I see. I understand that the planet is the source of me, literally. Just like a mum gives birth to a babe, Mother Earth's given birth to everything that's been made. Word to the Mother, source of every other thing, every being in the ring of creation. And every individual's a manifestation of the grace innate in this place, space, and time, expressing the blessing, caressing my mind. Holy osmosis, that's what the cosmos is. Boom, universe, earth, human. From the beginning, the spinning universe possessed a spiritual interior inside the manifest, blessed with a blast from the past tree at last as the Big Bang rang, sprang, sang from the start through the void. Like a joy from the heart of the dark, and the light's the birthright of us all. You and I are all the fireball. A higher call inspires all with a sense of place. Let us find the divine mind behind every face. I've just begun to recognize the whole soul force. Word to the Mother, word to the source. We've got to get back to the Mother. We've got to get back to the earth. We've got to get back to the Mother. We've got to get back to the earth. Word to the Mother. So how dare we have the nerve to disturb the planetary source, the very force that brought us alive? If she ain't in effect, there ain't no way to survive. How can we see no wisdom from the ecosystem? This industrialized phase, crazed to pave highways, yikes, 50,000 toxic sites, nuclear power plants constructed with haste, without any clue what to do with the waste. Radiation seeping deep in the nation, losing patience with corporations and abusers, grinning like they're winning when we'll all be the losers. They ignore natural forces, deplete our resources. No remorse, where of course hold your horses. Mother, may I try to say why my society lost sight of the whole, as we try and we try till we die to control the earth dream. That can never be tamed, and that can never be sold, and that can never be named. What's a shame and is lame is that we thought it was clever to dam every river ever. Never, never land is at hand until we see and rediscover. There ain't no other, it's absurd to have to say it, but word to the mother. We've got to get back to the mother. We've got to get back to the earth. We've got to get back to the mother. We've got to get back to the earth. The story of the mother, as I reminisce, was enough to make this brother eco-feminist. How can we limit the limitless exponential growth potential? Economy is secondary, Earth's essential. The mother exists in every wave on the sea, in every bird in the sky, in every leaf on the tree. Community, unity, you and me, family, all of us children born of 4 billion years of the blood, sweat and tears of the earth. We need to let her be. Let her go. Set her free, let her fly, let her flow, let her grow and unfold the way the mother intended. Activities that damage the earth must be suspended. Listen, because we're missing what the mother's advice is. She'll help us deal with ecological crisis. She's mightier than Aphrodite or Isis, and twice as creative, illustrative of the point. When the earth gives birth to the now. Still, we try and milk every sacred cow. We need to chill until we see that no creature is my enemy. They're all kin to me. Earth is the remedy for the malady. She's the truth at the root of reality. The elements of my bones are left over from the swirling stardust of a supernova, made by the earth and the breath of the one, reigns in the veins, in the flames of the suns, in the heart. Each part contains the sum of the whole, earth body, earth spirit, universe, soul. Word to the mother. You gotta love her. We've gotta get back to the mother. We've got to get back to the earth. We've got to get back to the mother. We've got to get back to the earth. So, thank you very much.